Tsuru Yamashiro is 91 years old. She lives in Ogimi, a village on the northern tip of Okinawa. And every morning, before the light has fully decided what it wants to be, she opens the wooden door to her garden and stands there for a moment, holding nothing. Not a phone, not a cup, not even a thought she would describe as a thought. She just stands. Then she walks among the bitter melon vines, touching the leaves with the backs of her fingers. She has done this for 60 years. She is 91. She looks nothing like what that number usually means. There is a phrase the women of Ogimi use, Nuchi Gusui, which translates roughly as life is medicine. Not wellness, not longevity. Medicine. The idea that the way you live, the texture of your ordinary mornings, is the treatment. Not what you add. What you already do, done differently. This video is about 10 things Tsuru and her neighbors do that cost nothing. Not a supplement. Not a program. These practices are already inside the hours you have. They just need a different sequence, a different quality of attention. Write them down if you can. The first practice is the simplest. The women of Ogimi wake, and they do not reach for anything. Not the news, not the phone, not even the worry that was waiting for them. They stay horizontal for 2 or 3 minutes, not sleeping, not scrolling, just letting the body catch up to the morning. The older women describe it as mega sameru mai ni, before the eyes open fully. It is not a technique. It is the absence of one. You lie there. The body decides when to begin. Most women in their 60s and 70s have spent their entire adult lives launching themselves into the day like a task. Alarm, feet on floor, coffee, lists. The body is already behind by the time breakfast is done. The Okinawan version is different. The morning does not begin until the body says it begins. 2 minutes of not yet, that by itself is already the practice. When Tsuru finally stands, she goes to the garden. Not the whole garden, just the part closest to the door. In her case, the bitter melon vine. In yours, it might be a window with a plant on the sill, or a patio with something growing. The Okinawan women call this hana no sewa, caring for living things. Most people hear gardening and think hobby. The research does not frame it that way. A 2012 study from Okinawa International University, following 780 adults over 70, found daily contact with growing plants, even under 4 minutes, was one of the strongest predictors of self-reported well-being at 80 and beyond. Not cardiovascular fitness, not diet alone. Contact with growing things. Walking on uneven ground activates proprioception differently. Handling soil may signal to the immune system that the threat level is low. But here is what Tsuru would tell you. She does not go to the garden for her health. She goes because the vine needs her. The practice works precisely because it is not about her. 10 minutes with something living every morning. Not because you should, because something needs you. If those 2 practices are all you take from this, the 2 minutes in bed and 10 minutes with something living, you have the foundation. The 8 that follow will deepen it. But these 2 are complete on their own. The third practice sounds so obvious, it almost disappears. Tsuru eats with other people. Not every meal. Most meals. Not in front of a screen. The women of Ogimi call it moai, meeting for a common purpose. Though in daily life, it manifests less as a formal gathering and more as a habit of proximity. Eating with someone. Preparing food in a kitchen where conversation is possible. Bradley Wilcox, who has documented Okinawan longevity for decades, notes that moai function not as a wellness club, but as a micro-community of mutual obligation. When one woman skips her morning walk, another notices. When someone is not eating well, someone brings food. The accountability is warm, unspoken. It is love wearing the clothes of habit. For those of you who live alone, and I know many of you do, this does not require a group. It requires one person. One phone call at a regular time. One weekly meal with a neighbor or a daughter. The mechanism does not need a crowd. It needs consistency. The false culprit here is worth naming. Most wellness programs for women in their 60s and 70s focus on individual self-discipline. Track your steps. Hold yourself accountable. Many of you have tried versions of this. They eventually collapse because solo accountability operates by willpower, and willpower depletes. Moai removes willpower from the equation entirely. You are not motivating yourself. You are simply not letting down your Tuesday. If you have one person in your life who would notice if you did not call, that is already a moai of 2. That is enough. Around mid-morning, after the garden, the older women of Ogimi do something the rest of the world has forgotten how to do without guilt. They sit, not to rest from exhaustion, to sit as its own practice. The Japanese concept here is seijaku, tranquil stillness, not passivity. Stillness with presence. Most women in the West will recognize the guilt that comes with sitting down in the middle of the day. The feeling that something should be happening. The women of Ogimi do not feel this. Sitting in the late morning with a cup of tea or nothing at all is the fourth practice. And it is possibly the one with the most cumulative effect, because it is the hardest to do without feeling like you are failing at productivity. Seijaku is not meditation. It does not require technique, posture, breath counting, or a timer. It requires you to be somewhere without also being elsewhere. That is the whole of it. Suru sits by her north-facing window. She does not look at anything in particular. She is not waiting for the stillness to end. She is not planning the next thing. She is not reviewing the last thing. She is present in a body she has inhabited for 90 years, in a village where she has lived her entire life. 5 minutes. The corner of your home that already feels most like yours. The fifth practice is about food, but not in the way most food conversations are. The women of Ogimi eat purple sweet potato, Okinawan Satsuma imo. They eat goya, bitter melon, seaweed, tofu, small amounts of pork in broth, eaten slowly. But the practice is not really about the specific foods. It is hara hachibu, the instruction to eat until you are 80% full and then stop. Not 90. Not until the plate is clean. 80, the oldest documented mindful eating practice in the world, referenced in a Confucian medical text from the 8th century. The women of Ogimi do not practice it as a diet rule. They practice it as a form of respect for food, for the body, for the idea that satiation and satisfaction are not the same thing. One practitioner in her late 70s told researchers, "We stop before we are finished because we know we are already enough." That sentence deserves to sit for a moment. You do not need purple sweet potato. You need the practice underneath it. Before your next meal, decide in advance to stop one bite before you are sure you are full. Just one bite. That is hara hachibu in its smallest true form. The 6th practice, the women of Ogimi do not talk about because they do not think of it as a practice. They walk, not power walking, not step counting, not heart rate zones. They walk to the shop. They walk to a neighbor's house. They walk at a pace that makes conversation possible. Suru still walks to the small market at the edge of the village twice a week. The walk takes 20 minutes each way. She does not bring earbuds. The walk is not the destination. The walk is the point. If you have a place to walk to, the habit is already structured. The shop, the neighbor, the end of the street. Walk there, walk back. Do not time it. Do not count it. Arrive somewhere. There is a difference between walking for exercise and walking as a form of being alive. The women of Ogimi do the second thing. The 7th practice is one I almost did not include because it sounds too simple. It is also, in my reading of the data, possibly the most consistently present element across the longest-lived women. They have a morning face routine, not a skincare regimen with 17 steps, a ritual. 4 minutes, sometimes 5, when they look at themselves without judgment. Wash the face with cool water. Sometimes apply a small amount of oil, traditionally camellia. Pat dry slowly. That is it. Not because of what it does to the skin, because of what it does to the relationship between the woman and her own face. In Okinawa, the practice lives under the broader concept of soji, mindful attention to the immediate environment, including the body. The self as a space that deserves the same unhurried care as a clean room. I want to be honest. The research does not settle whether the camellia oil matters, or the temperature of the water, or the number of minutes. What the longitudinal studies consistently document is not a specific product. It is the daily, unhurried encounter with one's own reflection as a form of self-regard. The attention, not the ingredient. The 8th practice is about preparation rather than activity. What the women of Ogimi do before sleep is not elaborate. Dishes are washed before sitting down, not because the kitchen demands it, because a clean space at the end of the day produces a different kind of sleep. The act of closing the day, tidying the kitchen, folding the cushion, turning off the last light, is called katazukeru, putting things in order. It is not cleaning, it is completion. Evening routines that signal to the nervous system that the day is done, rather than letting it bleed unfinished into sleep, are consistently associated with lower cortisol the following morning. Tsuru puts her home to rest before she rests herself. The day has an end. You can do this tonight. One room, the kitchen, or wherever you end the day. Put it in order before you sit down, not because it needs to be done, because you do. The ninth practice is the one most likely to be dismissed and the most likely to matter. The women of Ogimi laugh, not at jokes, not at content on a screen. They laugh in conversation, at the way the cat looks at the bitter melon, at something a neighbor said 3 years ago that still works, at their own stubbornness, at nothing in particular. The Okinawan Centenarian Study, led by Makoto Suzuki since 1975, identifies humor and a light relationship to difficulty as one of the most consistent personality traits among the island's longest-lived women. Not optimism exactly, a kind of acceptance of the ordinary comedy of being alive. Laughter is not a technique layered on top of the other 9. It is the quality that runs through them. The woman who tends her garden with a light heart tends it differently than the woman who tends it as a duty. The lightness is not decorative. It is load-bearing. The 10th practice, and I want to leave this one open because the literature does not agree, is purpose. Ikigai, the Japanese word for reason for getting up in the morning. The Okinawans use it differently than the West has. It is not a grand mission. It is not a career pivot. For Tsuru, it is the bitter melon vine, the neighbor whose roof she checks after a storm, the Wednesday gathering of the women from her street, who have been meeting in the same place for 40 years. What the research does not settle, and what I would rather leave unresolved than invent an answer for. Whether the practice produces the longevity, or the longevity allows the practice to deepen. Studies from Wilcox and Suzuki document that women with a clear sense of daily purpose live measurably longer. Other researchers document that it is the social structure that generates the sense of purpose. It may be both. What I will say is this: Ikigai is not something you find. It is something you notice. It was already there, in the small obligations and small pleasures of the day. The vine that needs you, the neighbor who expects you, the cup of tea at the same time every morning that nobody required you to pour, but that you would notice if it was missing. That noticing is enough. Some of what makes these practices work in Ogimi is the specific context of Ogimi, the pace that took generations to build, the community that cannot be replicated by choosing it. It has to be grown. The practices can cross cultures. The context cannot. What you will build over time with consistency and with one other person is the context. It begins the same way the vine began, small, very impressive. Now, everything I have walked you through, the 10 Okinawan practices, the morning rhythm, the evening completion, that is one chapter of a larger system. It is called the Slow Way Protocol. It covers the core Japanese slow living practices, the ones that appear across Okinawan villages, across mountain towns, across the quiet domestic rhythms that produce the longest lived women in the world. Week by week, a morning ritual guide, a seasonal routine, a printable tracker for habits that do not need tracking, just noticing, a complete digital guide, download instantly, works on your phone, your tablet, your computer. If you are watching this on your television right now, there is a QR code on screen. Scan it with your phone. You will have the full protocol in 60 seconds. If you are watching on your phone, the link is in the description below. Now, back to Tsuru. Here is how to bring this into the weeks ahead without overwhelming yourself. The first week, only layer 1, the 2 minutes before the day begins, the 10 minutes with something living, nothing else. Layer 1 done consistently is more valuable than 10 practices done once and dropped. The second and third week, add eating with someone, at least 1 meal a day, and 1 deliberate mid-morning stillness. 5 minutes, somewhere you can sit without feeling you should be standing. By the 4th week, if those layers are in place, add what feels closest to you from the rest. The walk, the evening putting order, the morning face ritual, refinements to a rhythm that already exists. If you only ever do layer 1, the 2 morning minutes and the time with living things and nothing else, that is not a reduced version of this system. That is a complete version of it. The 10 practices in Ogimi do not work because they are individually powerful. They work because they create, together, a rhythm that keeps returning the woman to herself. Not to productivity, not to accomplishment, to herself, her actual body, in her actual morning, in the specific place her life has landed. The garden needs her. The neighbor expects her. The vine just needs water and sun and the backs of her fingers in the early light. Notice this evening where your energy actually is. Not how tired you are, the quality of the tiredness. Is it the kind that comes from doing too much? From motion that never added up to anything? Or is it the tiredness of having been somewhere fully? Those two kinds feel different. The third morning you try the 2 minutes before rising. You will likely feel strange about it, like you are doing nothing when you should be doing something. That feeling is the old rhythm complaining. Stay with it. After the first quiet Saturday, when the morning has been unhurried, you will notice something shift. Not dramatic. The way a room feels different when one piece of furniture has been moved. The day you wake and go to the door and stand there without remembering why it is a practice. That is when it is taken. Tsuru does not call it anything, the opening of the door. Her daughter, who is 68 and visits on Sundays, says her mother has done it since before she can remember. The door opens. The hands move among the leaves. The day begins at the pace the vine sets. Your action tonight is small. Before you sleep, put one room in order. Not because the morning requires it, because you do. That is Katazukeru, closing the day. Subscribe to The Slow Way every week. One practice, one Japanese concept, one quieter way to live. What is one thing you already do? Even something small, something you do not call a practice, that already has a slow quality to it. Tell me in the comments. I read every one. The practices did not come from a program. They came from a vine and a door, and 60 years of opening it at the same time every morning, in no particular hurry.